I do want to make it clear that just because someone's vegan doesn't mean they're meant for you. Okay? It might seem like that at first until you get past that, oh my God, they're vegan honeymoon phase. Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to talk about something that I've probably been asked, to be honest, more than any other question since starting vegan YouTube and even starting off on Instagram. And that question is, would I ever date a non-vegan as a vegan? Now, I'm not just gonna make this video about myself and be like, oh, like would I, date a non-vegan as a vegan? I want to talk about the topic itself of like, do vegans date non-vegans? Because a lot of people ask this question. It's like almost all the time, every time I'm live streaming, at least one or even sometimes three people will just throw the question out like, what do you think about dating non-vegans? And I'm not really sure what the reason is. It's just always, it's like a constant question. And it's of course an interesting question, but it's like, I feel like people that are following me or whatever, or that are in my live streams, it's like they're always talking to a non-vegan maybe or something, and maybe they feel some dissonance about it. Because I've seen some people, like, after asking them, I'm like, why are you asking? And they're just like, oh, because I'm talking to this person. And like, I don't know how I feel about X, Y, Z. Anyway, this video is not going to be too organized. Just going to give my raw thoughts and my history with dating and why at this point I don't think I would ever date a non-vegan, but not because I think that it's wrong to, just because my preferences have been shaped a certain way after the last like 4 to 5 years. Now, the question of would you ever date a non-vegan is a very interesting one. And it's one that I think a lot of people, and vegans especially, obviously, when they answer the question, they'll say no, like very easily. And this is a little odd to me because the question of would you ever date a non-vegan is, in simple terms, could you ever see yourself developing feelings for a non-vegan? And we all know that you don't really choose your feelings. Love isn't a rational process. It kind of just occurs, and you have your set of preferences, and you come across certain people who have similar traits to you or opposite traits to you or complementary traits to you, and you feel certain ways about them. You see how you feel around them, and over time some amount of feelings will develop. So I can't say for sure that I will never ever have romantic feelings for someone who's not vegan, but I will say intuitively it's hard to conceptualize how myself, somebody who does what I do online, someone who's an animal rights activist, someone who's vegan for animals, would be physically and romantically attracted to someone. I mean, not physically, of course I could be physically into somebody who's a non-vegan, but romantically and emotionally attracted to someone who does what I hate daily. It's a little hard to understand why I would have that feeling. But again, feelings aren't rational, so it could be the case that at some point I will. Now, my last, I would say 5 or 6 years of dating has only been with vegans. And when I say dating, I mean like, adding the exclusive label of like, oh, we're boyfriend and girlfriend. Of course, I've dated around and they're not always going to be vegans, but generally speaking, I find it very easy for me to find vegan girls, only because if you look at the demographic of vegans, I believe it's around 2/3 are women and then 1/3 are men. And as a heterosexual male, like myself, the statistics or the averages are in my favor, right? Basically, when you're a male and you're heterosexual and you're vegan, you're quite advantaged because you are scarce in this demographic, and the target that you have for your romance is abundant. And because you're scarce, your value actually goes up to these other people who are abundant, because scarcity creates value, and obviously the less of something, the more valuable they're going to be. So I've been very lucky in the last 4 to 5 to 6 years in that I'm just a heterosexual male in a female dominated demographic where I'm just kind of scarce. Because I've mainly dated vegans, and because it's so easy for me to date vegans, I don't see why I would ever go out of my way to date a non-vegan. Now, dating a non-vegan isn't a bad thing in my view. I think it's very possible that you can end up dating a non-vegan and eventually you can possibly convert them to the cult. And by cult, I really just mean like you convince them to maybe stop paying for animals to be mass bred, exploited, and murdered. Very extreme thing to do, right? To convince a partner to stop paying for animal abuse, but anyway, yeah, there's definitely value in dating a non-vegan, especially one who's open to your lifestyle. Now, if you're gonna be someone who's a very passionate animal rights vegan activist, it's gonna be very difficult for you to date and love somebody who actively participates in that which you hate and also fight against on a daily basis. I mean, how could you be a vegan activist and go out on the streets and just talk to a bunch of people about animal rights and all these things, and then go home and your partner brings home like a meat lover's pizza or something, and you know what went into that pizza? I mean, you're gonna be pretty turned off, or at least I would be, right? And the other thing is that animal products over time become very repulsive, at least for me, and I think a lot of vegans I've talked to. Over time, animal products become this thing that's like a category of food that's not really food. Like, you just see the suffering and you see the death. And outside of what you can attribute the actual meat and animal products to, like the animals that died, also just what it is, you know, like flesh is just like rotting, you know, the corpses of another animal, or like the bodily excretions or secretions that come out of an animal, like dairy or milk. Eggs comes out of a chicken's cloaca, which is where piss, shit, and blood pass through. You have to understand, as a non-vegan, if you're watching this, why somebody who doesn't eat those things and also is, you know, aware of where these things come from, why they would be a little grossed out by you ordering those food items, right? And if you don't understand what I'm saying, just imagine if somebody ate dogs or cats. You know, like, would you want to date somebody who munched on dog legs? And this is going to be assuming you're a dog lover, or at the very least have a problem with dogs being murdered or cats being murdered for food. So yeah, over time, it's just kind of gross. I even have a roommate who's vegan, and he went on a date with a non-vegan. And this was one of the first times he's been on a date with a non-vegan in a while, because he had been dating vegans prior. And the person got like a meat lover's pizza, and it just grossed him out. Like, he quite literally, in his head, I mean, he wanted to say this. I forgot if he did say this or not, but he was like, you better brush your fucking teeth, like, before we do anything, because that's just gross. So do I think that vegans shouldn't date non-vegans? Definitely not. I just think that it's very hard to understand how a vegan could, unless this non-vegan was a very open-minded non-vegan who seemed like they were on the way to potentially being vegan. There's plenty of people I've heard about who, you know, they've found someone who's not a vegan while they themselves are a vegan, and then over time the partner ends up switching, and it's this beautiful thing. I've heard of other scenarios too where the same thing happens, except the partner doesn't go vegan, and over time they end up breaking up because, you know, the vegan partner is very passionate about this stuff and is grossed out by that which you have to support when you consume animal products, and then the other partner is just kind of like numb to it. They're not willing to change at all, and over time this leads to just a huge conflict of interest, or conflict of values, sorry, and they end up breaking up. And, you know, I could already hear the anti-vegans in the comments saying something like, oh, these vegans are so culty, they won't even date somebody outside of their little demographic. And I mean, I would just say that the reason that vegans tend to not want to date non-vegans is the same reason that many people and dog lovers and cat lovers wouldn't want to date somebody who pays for the mass murder of cats and dogs, right? Not too hard to understand. And to the vegans watching, I would say that if you are out in the dating world, and, you know, given you live in a normal place, on average, you're gonna be primarily around non-vegans. So there has to be some level of openness if you want to, you know, date in a way where you have at least an abundance of options, right? So I would say that try to be a little more open-minded as to the, you know, the indoctrination process and how conditioned people seem to be for animal products. Give these people a chance. Some non-vegans simply just don't understand what they're supporting and don't even know what they're supporting. And for that reason, just be a little more open to those people. Now, there's some vegans I've heard about who are very passionate about animal rights, and they are dating a non-vegan who has no plans of changing. And it's fascinating because the vegans are very passionate about this stuff, and they're still attracted to this person. And this kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. Like, feelings are not rational. Just because you have a particular set of values and you find another person who has values which conflict with yours, even on like a fundamental level, that doesn't mean that you're not gonna find them attractive. What you find attractive is not really a choice at the end of the day. What I've discovered from my experience is that the more vegan girls I date, the less urge or desire I have to even entertain a girl who's not vegan. And again, as I said before, I'm a bit advantaged here being a heterosexual male in a female dominated demographic, but still, I've just noticed this. So I'm not sure if I'll ever really you know, go ahead and explicitly go out with a meat eater. Oh, another random thing I've remembered, because again, this video is just not going to be structured whatsoever. A couple years ago, when I was in between relationships and I was dating around, there was a meat eater who went to a sushi place with me. And before going on this date, I had gotten out of a relationship of, I think it was like 2 years, with a vegan girl, around 2 years. And I had forgotten what it's like to go to a restaurant with a girl who, you know, you're supposed to be attracted to, and seeing them consume like raw flesh right in front of me. I think she got like eel and like some other disgusting shit, at least disgusting in my view. And I was immediately just turned off. And I was like, why don't I just stick to the vegan girls for now? And then I started to do that. And just by default, the vegan girls were more attractive to me, just in that they were not consuming the corpses of other animals. This probably sounds so weird to non-vegans to hear, but yeah, like vegans have these values. Like we're grossed out by those things. And I gotta say too, guys, I don't know how new to being vegan you are, whoever's watching this, but you'll understand or learn over time that just because someone's vegan does not mean that, oh my God, like they got it, there might be the perfect one, or like they're vegan, like, oh my gosh. Even for girls too, like I've seen some girls discover that a guy's vegan because they're so scarce and they get very excited. But you got to remember that being vegan is just one trait. All right. It's not as impressive as I used to think it was. At first you're like, oh my God, like you're vegan too. I'm vegan too. It's so rare. Like woohoo, woohoo. But being against animal abuse is just, in my view now, it's like a baseline kind of trait. It's not something that I truly admire. There's definitely value in going against the grain and, you know, unlearning all these things you've been conditioned to do since birth. But the actual value of it, like the moral value of it, is not as impressive as it used to be. And there are vegans that you'll end up finding where it's just like, wow, like, yeah, you're vegan, but like we have no other interests outside of being vegan. So you got to be careful about that too. You might end up with someone because you're super excited that they're vegan, and then once the little honeymoon phase of, oh my God, I found a vegan partner, falls off or ends, you're gonna be like, wait a minute, there's literally nothing about this person that I enjoy besides the fact that they're vegan, or very little about them that I enjoy. Just like any demographic, there's variations of specific types of people in those demographics. There's intersectional vegans, there's religious vegans, there's like more scientific vegans, there's the pro-vax vegans, there's the anti-vax vegans. Like there's all kinds of vegans out there. There's the raw vegans, the fruitarians, you know, the ones who love pseudoscience. So for me, for example, I can't ever find myself dating a vegan who is super into, you know, like screw modern medicine. They're super into like the pseudoscience stuff. They're maybe like, I don't want to use the word overly spiritual, but they're not a big fan of like science. They're more like, you know, science is fundamentally flawed. Try this juice cleanse that I don't know. Some, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So yeah, there's types of vegans too that you have to look out for if you're gonna date vegans. Maybe this is a slight tangent from the video because we're supposed to be talking about dating non-vegans, but I do want to make it clear that just because someone's vegan doesn't mean they're meant for you. Okay, it might seem like that at first until you know, get past that, oh my God, they're vegan honeymoon phase. Continuing this topic of types of vegans, I have a friend of mine who recently matched with a girl on Tinder who was vegan, and he was kind of hyped to see her, whatever. And he ended up telling me that this girl ended up being, you know, much more plant-based. She said she's doing it for health, and that she's very numb when watching factory farm footage. All right, so I mean, now we can get into the whole like debate of like, she was never really vegan or she's not really vegan, and you know, now we're operating under different definitions. She says she's vegan because she doesn't eat animal products, and then we're over here saying like, well, vegan doesn't just mean that, it means also this and that. I don't want to get too into that, even though I just kind of summarized that whole thing real quick. Yeah, so that was an example of a vegan where he was like, nah, and like she also gave off those pseudoscience health vegan vibes. So, you know, another example supporting my little hypothesis, you know, or idea that you should not just like someone because they're vegan. Oh, and last thing, if you're a vegan who just outrightly refuses to date or even consider dating a non-vegan, but you also are around barely any vegans, so you're now in this scenario where you have nothing or close to nothing, maybe consider being more open to dating non-vegans, because you can find a non-vegan who is very open and then you end up converting them. I hate that word, convert. It really does make us sound like a cult. I'll say not end up converting them, but anti-animal abusing them. We'll use, that's like a verb. We're gonna use that verb now. Makes it sound a little less culty, I think. And yeah, just remember that you weren't always vegan. So that, if anything, should be the one thing that allows you to date non-vegans. Of course, there's going to be different traits that are just like, okay, no. You know, if you're swiping through Tinder and you see like, I love meat, or like bacon though, or like, I can eat more chicken nuggets than you, or some weird bullshit like that, or hunter, fisher, all that, then okay, just swipe left and go for there's non-vegans who tend to have things like about the environment in their bios, I'm pretty sure, and like things that give you a signal or a sign that they might be a little bit more open. Or animal lover is another one. People put animal lover even though that, you know, they're eating animals. So maybe those people are a little more open to changing for you. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I have to say on this topic. I'm probably going to think of some other shit to say after this, because this is an unscripted video. I normally write scripts, but now I'm just talking randomly, seeing whatever comes out. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude,
fuck off. I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who is your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,